Welcome to a sleepy journey. But not a boring one. Tonight, we'll turn the pages of the tumultuous history of the Ashkenazi Jews, from their earliest exiles to the deeply ingrained memories of resistance flowing through their veins. You trudge up a dusty hillside path just as the last slant of golden light catches on the gnarled arms of an olive tree. The hills are alive with the sighs of goats, the bark of shepherd dogs, and the slow creak of wooden wheels dragging harvests back to stone homes. Somewhere behind you, a child's voice sings the Shema, cracked but proud. The breeze is thick with thyme and wood smoke. You've reached the northern edge of a Galilean village. Small. Tired. Older than memory. But it's not as quiet as it looks. A Roman patrol just passed not an hour ago. You didn't see them, but the women at the well did. They always do. Their tunics still cling damp to their arms as they whisper in Aramaic, glancing sideways. You pick up phrases, extra levy, road watch, unjust wait, but most of all, they're back. You wouldn't last 2 weeks here. The mosquitoes alone would make you surrender. The curfews, the taxes, the shifting allegiances. You try to reason with someone, a soldier, a merchant, a priest, and they'd just shrug. Because reason doesn't grow here like figs or barley. Suspicion does. Grit. And something else too. Just beginning to smolder, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here on Ashkenazi Historian, and hey, where are you listening from? Drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lean on a sun-warmed stone as two boys argue near a fence. It's not about toys. It's about Judea, he said. Galilee is free, the smaller one hisses, glaring at his brother. The older boy scoffs. Free from what? The tax collector just took half our flour. Their mother steps in, tossing a glance your way. You pretend to be interested in your sandal. The boy isn't wrong, taxes are heavier now. Ever since Rome replaced the last native puppet with a full procurator, everything's gotten more. Roman. Latin echoing in court. New census rolls. New debts. Even the shepherds grumble in Greek now, but this isn't the story of revolt. Not yet. This is the part where people learn to smile with clenched teeth. Where you learn to keep your real opinions under your cloak, near your knife. Where a widow's lost dinar leads to a prayer that sounds a bit too much like a curse. You step through the village square just as a man in a wool robe unrolls a scroll in front of a half-circle of elders. His voice trembles with righteous fury, woe to those who build Zion with blood. He cries, the elders nod, slowly. Some in agreement. Some to calm him. That verse from Micah. It's been quoted more these days. Alongside Isaiah. Amos. Any prophet with a complaint about injustice, really. They're back in style. Like linen sandals or subtle sabotage, historians still debate how widespread rebellion was in the decades before the Great Revolt. Some say only a few loud factions stirred trouble. Others claim the embers burned everywhere, even in polite conversation over lentils. What's clear, though, is that the Galilee, far from the temple's shadow, bred its own kind of tension. Quiet. Patient. But utterly flammable. Down the hill, a Roman watchtower catches the last of the sun. Its silhouette ruins the skyline, stubby and arrogant. The locals say it's cursed. That once, a centurion's horse collapsed mid-gallop when he passed it. But the soldiers still come. They laugh too loud. They demand bread with garlic. They mispronounce Hebrew blessings when drunk. And worst of all, they stay. Tonight, you duck into a one-room home, lentil stew already bubbling. You're a guest here, which means you're fed first, then questioned. The father speaks with the weary rhythm of a man who has seen 3 governors come and go. The mother has questions. Do you know the signs of the Messiah? What about the new group near the lake, the ones who wash daily and say the end is near? She's talking about the Essenes, probably. Or maybe not. Fringe groups bloom like desert flowers during hard times. One preacher's kingdom of heaven is another's tax resistance. And one man's prayer shawl might hide a dagger. You ask a question, gently. Do people here talk about revolt? The father chews his bread longer than necessary. Then, no one talks. They wait. Out the window, you see smoke trailing up from a far-off ridge. A fire? Or just cooking? You can't tell. Neither can anyone else. That's how fear works. It's like smoke, hard to track, impossible to bottle, and it always comes before the fire. One quirky tale you overhear tonight: a man nearby was arrested not for violence, but because he wrote a poem comparing Caesar to Pharaoh. No knives, no mobs, just iambs. The Roman magistrate called it incitement. His family calls it prophecy. You sleep on a mat beside the hearth. Every creak outside sounds like a soldier. Every rooster crow feels premature. Dawn arrives wearing silence, the dangerous kind. In the morning, the market is full of produce and unease. You buy a fig and accidentally make eye contact with a man who doesn't blink. He nods toward the hills. Smoke again, he mutters, and you begin to wonder, is it all smoke, or has someone already struck the match? You wake with the distinct sensation that something is stuck in your sandal. Not a thorn, heavier. You slip it off and shake it, and out plinks a worn bronze coin. A pruta, stamped with a faded palm tree on one side and some indignant Greek on the other. You turn it in your fingers, squinting. It's not much, a peasant's pocket lint. But in Judea, even a single coin can start a fire. The market is alive now. You shuffle between stalls packed with onions, wool, dried fish, and grudges. And always, coins. They clink, vanish, reappear. They travel faster than gossip and cause more trouble. A boy near you is arguing with a fish seller. His pouch is too light. The vendor waves a half coin in his face. Taxes, the vendor snaps. Tiberius wants his share. Don't like it? Go cry in the temple. You wouldn't believe how many revolutions have started with math problems. A little overtaxing here. A dishonest weight there. And one day, a coin in your sandal. You watch a Roman officer leaning against a pillar, counting payments into a locked box, his fingers too fat. His ring too big. Behind him, a Judean clerk does the real work, tallying in a neat hand. The clerk flinches when someone shouts. You can tell he's torn. Is he more afraid of his own people? Or the empire he serves? Now, this is where it gets tricky. Because the temple, the beating heart of Jerusalem, also demands coins. Not just any coin, mind you. It has to be Tyrian silver. Not Roman. Not Greek. Tyrian. Why? Because it's pure enough for offerings, and also, delightfully, minted with pagan imagery. A contradiction big enough to make a Pharisee faint. So here's the average Judean's dilemma: pay Roman taxes, tithe at the temple, feed your family, and survive in a system that bleeds from both sides. Many manage. Others start sharpening plowshares. You lean into a conversation near the spice vendor. Two merchants, both greasy with sesame oil, whisper in clipped tones. They say the money changers are fixing the rate. Which ones? All of them. You nod politely and pretend to be fascinated by dried coriander. But your ears are wide open. Everyone suspects the money changers. Even the ones who use them. Especially the ones who use them. One rumor says a Sadducee high priest's cousin runs half the exchange booths near the temple court. Another says he's taking a cut from both Rome and God. Historians still argue over whether the temple was corrupt in the decades before the revolt. Some claim it remained a center of piety. Others insist it had become a gilded engine of spiritual extortion, beautiful on the outside, hollow within. The truth, perhaps, is that it was both. Like many holy places in troubled lands, meanwhile, a minor scandal brews down the street. A tax official has been caught with two ledgers, one for Rome, one for himself. A crowd gathers to mock him. He's not arrested. He's promoted. Because the system doesn't punish theft. It licenses it. You wander toward the synagogue at the edge of the village, where an old man is giving a drash on Deuteronomy. His beard is yellowed with age and lemons, do not oppress the laborer. He calls, banging his hand on the bima, the crowd nods with quiet fury. But no one mentions Rome by name. That's the rule, speak in parables, or speak not at all. Outside, someone scrawled graffiti on a stone wall, God's justice isn't taxed. It's clever. It's risky. And it'll be scrubbed off before sundown. You pass a young couple counting coins beneath a fig tree. They're saving for a pilgrimage. You know the look, faith held together by copper and prayer. The woman turns to you and smiles. Do you think the temple will still stand when our son is old? You pause. Smile back. You don't have the heart to tell her what history already knows. Back at the market, you notice a small gathering. A wiry man is holding up a denarius, the silver Roman coin stamped with the emperor's face. Tell me, he says, grinning. If this is Caesar's image, does it belong to him? The crowd titters nervously. He flips the coin and catches it midair. And if you are made in God's image, who do you belong to? You blink. That's not just clever. That's dangerous. A woman near you whispers, he's with the Galileans. They say things. The Galileans. Again. Always them. There's something about the north, less Roman oversight, more bandits, thicker accents. They breed poets, prophets, and problems. You return to your lodging. The householder sits in the shade, mending a sandal. He eyes your coin. Where'd you find that? In my sandal, you say. He chuckles bitterly. That's where they all end up. Later, over dinner, someone brings up the census. Not the last one, the one before that. The bad one. The one that led to a revolt by a man named Judas the Galilean. It started, like all things here, with taxes. That was decades ago, but no one forgets. Especially not Rome. A quirky story. Once, a tax inspector in Jericho was chased by a pack of angry weavers who'd calculated their wool quota differently using Leviticus. They dumped sacks of dyed cloth at the governor's feet in protest. No swords, just a lot of linen and yelling. He doubled the tax the next day. That's how things work here. You go to sleep with the coin still in your hand, feeling its edges, its weight, its lie. Because coins aren't just currency in Judea. They're signals. Symbols. Triggers. They pass through hands and sometimes they ignite them. Tomorrow, you'll try to forget it. But the sandal never lies. It begins with a stairwell argument, a narrow, worn staircase in the back of a Jerusalem tenement, where stone walls amplify every word, every insult, every sigh. You're passing through, just trying to get to the roof, maybe catch a glimpse of the temple catching gold in the sunrise. When you hear them, you dined with them. One voice hisses, and why not? Better Romans than cowards. Comes the reply, low, furious, older. You freeze mid-step. The air smells like baked clay, old sandals, and roasted garlic. But there's also something else in it now, ideology. The younger voice cuts back in. You think this is about dinner? They murder our priests and defile our land, and you pass them olives. You don't dare move. Zealotry isn't a word here. It's a rhythm. It lives in the veins of sons and the bones of old revolutionaries pretending they've retired. You peek through the cracked plaster, just enough to see the two men. One is young, fists clenched, beard patchy and proud. The other, wiry, salt and pepper hair, tunic fraying, is trying, failing, to hold his dignity. You were like me once, the youth growls. Before Herod paid your rent. And that's when you realize, this isn't a family spat. This is a movement recruiting in the hallway. You wouldn't survive this stairwell. You'd ask too many questions, pronounce the names wrong, bring the wrong offering to the wrong meeting. And you'd be gone, swallowed by the city's alleys or a zealot's righteous rage. The younger man storms off. The older one slumps onto the stairs, his face in his hands. You slip past him quietly, your sandals brushing ancient dust off blood-stained stone, so now you're on the roof, the view is everything you hoped. The temple gleams in the near distance, and the city hums below like a tense beehive. But you can't unhear the venom in that stairwell. Because that's where the revolt is blooming, not in the Senate, not in the temple, but between relatives. Historians still argue about the beginnings of the Zealot movement. Was it an ideology? A network? A family feud gone viral? What's clear is that by the early decades of the 1st century CE, pockets of Judean society were already boiling. This wasn't one rebellion, it was 1,000 little ones, stitched into dinner conversations, muttered on hillsides, and written on scraps passed in the market. You descend into the city again, and the voices follow. In the alley, a carpenter mutters about Roman nails. In the bakery, a boy draws a dagger shape in flour before his mother slaps it away. At a small study circle, you hear the name Phinehas whispered. You remember the story, the priest who ran a spear through a couple mid-act to halt a plague. Zeal, they called it. Holy fury. Some here take that tale a little too literally. There's a growing fashion among young men, long hair, linen belts, and coded slogans. The Roman guards call them knife dancers. Their neighbors call them Caesarea, little dagger men. They slip into crowds during festivals, stab collaborators, and vanish like smoke. No trial. No speeches. Just silence and blood. You pass a stonemason chiseling words into a doorstep. You pause to read, better to die for the law than live for Rome. He sees you looking. He doesn't smile. You move on. Some say the Caesarea are thugs. Others say they're prophets. One quirky account tells of a Sicarius who stabbed a tax collector, then wept over him, quoting Hosea. He was never caught, but someone left a rose on the victim's grave every year after. You slip into a modest courtyard where a scroll reading is taking place. The reader is red-eyed but clear-voiced. He reads from the Psalms, "Let the high praises of God be in their throats, and a two-edged sword in their hands." The crowd nods. Some too eagerly. A woman beside you mutters, "Even David knew the sword and song go together." You nod politely, though uneasily. Because now you see it, Jerusalem is divided, not neatly, not cleanly. It's not zealots versus Rome. It's fathers versus sons, scribes versus soldiers, the devout versus the pragmatic. And they all share stairwells. Later that evening, you attend a small gathering, candles lit, bread passed, nothing overt. But the host toasts with a phrase that lingers, "May the yoke be broken." No one says whose yoke. But they all raise their cups. The host tells a joke about a zealot who tried to convert a Roman legionary by quoting Jeremiah. The punchline involves a goat and a mistranslated curse. You laugh, but it's tight in your throat. After the meal, someone hands you a clay token. "If you want to hear more," he says. "Roof, 3 streets west, tomorrow night." You nod and tuck it in your sleeve. But you won't go. You're just passing through. Remember, that night, you dream of stairwells. Of narrow spaces where ideas collide and something worse is born. You wake before dawn, heart pounding, because somewhere nearby, someone is carving a dagger from olive wood. Someone else is writing scripture on a hidden blade, and someone, maybe even that boy from the stairwell, has already made peace with dying for something he hasn't yet lived to see. You step through an arched gate into a silence so heavy it makes your ears ring. The city has shifted, not in time, but in tone. You're in Jericho now, or maybe Caesarea Maritima, or possibly one of Herod's dozen other grandiose playgrounds. They all look similar from here: stone vaults, crumbling mosaics, opulence without breath. The air smells faintly of salt, dust, and overreaching ambition. Herod the Great has been dead for decades, but his fingerprints are still sticky on every pillar. You can't move 5 steps without brushing past a wall he built, a road he paved, or a shrine he erected to his own ego. And every single one whispers the same thing: I mattered. You pass a cracked statue base, the inscription chiseled off, no doubt by someone with a different opinion about Herod's legacy. A gardener's fig tree grows defiantly through what was once a colonnade. Even stone has a half-life. Pride decays quicker than mortar. You'd think this place would be empty. But you hear voices. Not ghosts, groundskeepers. Bureaucrats. Tax counters. Men and women still living in Herod's shadow, sorting receipts from long-dead tribute systems, muttering about archiving problems and Roman shipping schedules. The palace is dead. But the system? Oh, it grinds on. You wouldn't survive long here either. You'd sneeze at the wrong fresco and be fined. Or worse, mistaken for a zealot tourist and politely ejected via spearpoint. Still, you walk on. Deeper into the palace ruins, you find a hallway painted with fading frescoes, peacocks, vines, a goddess or two with knowing smiles. Roman art in Jewish space, an aesthetic tension Herod mastered. He was half Jewish, all cunning, and not above using pagan decoration to impress Caesar and scandalize the priests. Herod, in many ways, was a paradox in sandals. Historians still debate whether he was a brilliant ruler or a brutal monster. Perhaps he was both. He secured Judea's autonomy under Rome, built the Second Temple's platform into a marvel, and slaughtered family members like errant flies. One scholar calls him a genius of insecurity. Another just calls him a man who built too much because he trusted too little. You reach the throne room. Or what's left of it. The mosaic floor still bears fragments of a Roman eagle, the kind that enraged more than a few purists. You kneel, trace a talon with your finger. Someone tried to scratch it out. The mark is still there. Deep. Angry, nearby. A guardhouse stands empty. But on the back wall, in etched Hebrew, his palaces are dust, but his spies still breathe. Herod's network of informants was legendary. He didn't rule by affection, he ruled by knowing what you whispered in your wine. Servants were ears. Neighbors were dossiers. You wonder if the person watching you now, the boy sweeping the steps, knows exactly who you are and where you've slept. Later, you sit in a faded atrium, where pomegranate trees once shaded scroll readers and terrified guests. A local explains to you, too eagerly, that Herod even had cold running water in this palace, using aqueducts and pressure channels. It was a marvel, he boasts. You raise an eyebrow. And did the poor drink from it? He doesn't answer. A fringe tale you hear today. Herod once buried gold under the foundation of each major project, just to curse whoever tried to dismantle it. No one's ever found any. But some still dig. Others swear that's why his buildings won't die, not because of craftsmanship, but greed. And yet, it's not the gold or the stone that lingers, it's the fear. A servant girl tells you that the Herodian palaces still echo at night. Not with footsteps. With judgments. Herod ordered executions from these balconies. He dined where the blood barely dried. Some say his spirit paces the roof when a governor is replaced. Always pacing. Always paranoid. You visit the Temple Mount next, not the temple itself, of course, but the enormous platform Herod built to support it. Still standing. Still groaning under centuries of prayer and politics. It was his masterwork, and the ultimate irony. A man half loved, half despised, building the holiest site for a people who never quite forgave him. You run your hand along the massive ashlars, some 500 tons each. Engineers today still scratch their heads. How did he move them? Theories abound. Rollers. Slave armies, divine stubbornness. But you know the real answer: fear. Herod built like a man who thought death could be outrun by architecture. As the sun begins to set, you climb onto a terrace overlooking the sea. The horizon glows in a way Herod himself must have watched, lonely, triumphant, furious. Below, children play beside the ruined bathhouse. A teacher shouts something about respecting the past. The children laugh. The ghosts remain silent. The ghosts remain silent, and as you turn to leave, you look back at the crumbling palace. It's empty now, yes, but you feel watched. Not by a ghost. By a precedent, because Herod may be gone, but the world he built, cynical, surveilled, gilded, is alive and well, and somewhere nearby, a young rebel sharpens a blade and murmurs a prayer, not to undo Rome, but to undo Herod's compromise, because that ghost. It doesn't scare them, it offends them, it starts with the scent of incense. You're in Jerusalem again, and the air is thick with clove, myrrh, and the sweat of animals whose journey ended beneath a bronze altar. The second temple looms above you, immense. Impossibly white, its stones sun-blinded into godliness. You shield your eyes. You've arrived during the afternoon offering. Which means, trumpet blasts, Levite choirs, and the murmured hopes of thousands, but behind the ritual choreography, oh, behind it, is a war of interpretation. You walk toward the women's courtyard, ducking beneath linen awnings. Merchants argue softly over the price of doves. Priests glide by like clockwork. And near the wall, a line of men in white robes debate the proper order of the psalms for Sukkot. They're polite. Barely, one turns to you, wagging a fig-stained finger. You believe the soul is immortal? He asks. Before you can answer, another scoffs. Hellenist nonsense. The Torah says dust returns to dust. You back away. You've accidentally wandered into a philosophical bar fight. This is Judea, remember. You can't walk 10 steps without stepping into theology. And you wouldn't last long here either, not unless you can quote both Leviticus and loopholes. The temple seems unified from a distance, but from up close it splinters, into beliefs, into castes, into tension you could slice with a ritual blade. Let's make things even more complicated, shall we? There isn't just one Judaism here. There are dozens. And they all claim the same God. You've got the Sadducees, for starters, wealthy, aristocratic, temple-focused. They run the show. They keep Rome happy. They don't believe in angels, the afterlife, or oral law. Just scripture. Period. Then the Pharisees, popular with the masses. They're scholars, lawyers, fence builders of commandments. They believe in resurrection, in oral traditions, in ethical law woven through every cabbage purchase. They argue constantly, and that's how they bond. Then come the Essenes, those desert mystics. They think the whole temple is corrupt. They've retreated to the wilderness, dipped themselves in mikvahs until their toes are wrinkled, and are waiting for two messiahs, one priestly, one kingly. Always two. You even hear whispers of a fourth group, the way, they call it. It's not big yet. Just a few Galileans muttering strange things about love, kingdoms not of this world, and a teacher who ate with sinners. But that's another story. For now, historians still argue about how much these sects hated one another. Some say they were cousins squabbling at a funeral. Others insist it was outright theological warfare. Either way, the temple was the arena, the prize, and the trigger. You find yourself at the edge of a ritual bath. Two men are emerging, soaked, shivering slightly. Purity of the body, one says, reflects the soul. The other laughs. So why does the high priest bathe 8 times and still charge admission? A joke, yes. But you see the eyes behind it. People are angry. Not just at Rome. At each other. At a system they love but don't trust. At a God they revere but feel has grown silent, and in all of this, the temple stands. Huge. Perfect. Radiant, and fragile. A quirky scroll you glimpse today, smuggled from Qumran, maybe, tells of a heavenly temple, one untouched by human sin. This one, the writer sneers, is but a shadow. You make your way into the court of Israel, where a priest is instructing boys on sacrifice technique. He speaks with the confidence of a man who knows his God likes precision. Slit from neck to collarbone, he says, miming the motion. Smooth. One stroke. You shiver. Not from blood, from how casual it's become. You think back to the prophets, Isaiah, Micah, Amos. They warned about this, didn't they? Sacrifices without justice. Rituals without compassion. You wonder how long the balance can last. Then, a voice, sharp, impudent, rises from a nearby colonnade. Woe to you, scribes and priests! You polish the cups but rot the inside. Heads turn. A few gasps. A child drops a figure. You don't see the speaker, but his words ring ancient. And dangerous. He's gone before the guards arrive. You retreat to the edge of the temple complex. Your sandals crunch on limestone. The afternoon sun angles through the arches, making halos where none belong. A teacher sits nearby with his students, arguing about a verse in Exodus. But what is the spirit of the commandment? He asks. Without spirit, are we any better than Rome? The students shift. One mutters, Rome is precise, too efficient. Another responds, and empty. They go quiet. That's the tension, isn't it? The temple is glorious. Sacred. It houses the divine, or so everyone hopes. But behind its walls, people bicker, bribe, correct each other's Hebrew, and wonder if God still listens. You pass a stall selling oil for menorahs. The vendor winks. 2 prices, he says. One for the righteous. One for the rest. You laugh, softly, and pay the higher price. As night falls, the outer courts begin to clear. Pilgrims retreat to inns. Priests sweep the stones. But somewhere, tucked behind a lattice wall or inside a mikveh chamber, debates continue, low and looping, like prayers that don't know when to end. 2 temples, then. One of stone and sacrifice. One of yearning and dissent, and maybe. Just maybe. One is trembling because of the other. You arrive at the Jaffa gate just as the morning sun lights up the limestone like a furnace. It's barely dawn, but Jerusalem is already breathing heavily. Carts groan, sandals scuffle, vendors shout in voices half-hoarse from yesterday. You edge past a clump of Roman soldiers dicing for coins, and that's when you hear him, a voice, sharp, cracked, soaring over the crowd like a crow that knows how to rhyme. Daughters of Zion, weep not for me, but for your sons who'll die beneath the fig tree. You turn, and there he is, barefoot, dust-caked, eyes wide with the kind of clarity that only comes from madness. Or something more dangerous. A prophet, or at least, someone playing the part convincingly. He's not alone, of course. There's always a crowd. Some amused, some concerned, a few whispering blasphemy under their breath, but most listening. You wouldn't survive long in his tunic. You'd question the timing, hedge your metaphors, try to footnote Isaiah mid-speech. He just screams truth into stone. You inch closer. He's holding a clay jar, broken. Symbolic, surely. Everything is. He lifts it above his head, then smashes it on the gate's threshold. Thus shall Jerusalem be shattered, he shouts, voice rising like incense. Not by the hand of Pharaoh, but from within. A soldier nearby stiffens. You lean toward a fruit vendor. What's his name? She shrugs. Doesn't matter. There's a new one every season. And that's true. Prophets in this era are like weeds in a neglected vineyard. Some shout about fire, others about peace. One walks naked for weeks, inspired, he claims, by Hosea. Another eats only locusts and honey. They all predict doom. Most are ignored, but not all. Historians still debate how influential these street prophets truly were. Were they serious players, stirring the crowds into rebellion? Or were they sideshows, harmless pressure valves in a tense city? Either way, their words left scorch marks, not on the walls, but in hearts already cracked with doubt. You follow the prophet as he stumbles down a stone alley, trailing followers like dust motes. One holds a basket of figs. Another scribbles frantically on parchment. And one, younger, darker-eyed, says nothing, just watches you watching them. the prophet stops suddenly beside a beggar and lays a hand on his shoulder. "Rise," he commands. The beggar blinks. "You're not crippled," the prophet mutters. "You're just exhausted." He moves on. It's not magic he offers, it's poetry so raw it almost bleeds. And the people here? They're starving for it. You duck into a shaded stall where two scribes are arguing. The man misquotes Ezekiel, one grumbles, the other shrugs. So did half the Essenes. And the temple's still standing. For now, the first one whispers. They both glance toward the gate, now empty. The prophet has moved on. But the echo of his voice clings to the arches like smoke. Later, you find him again in the valley of Hinnom. A fitting place. The ancients called it Gehenna, a cursed ravine once linked to child sacrifice, now a place of landfill and whispered metaphors for divine punishment. He's sitting atop a rock, preaching to the dogs and two slightly uncomfortable goats. God will not dwell in stones alone. He intones. He seeks justice, and sandal straps unloosened. It makes little sense. And perfect sense. You sit for a while, letting the words pour over you. One part riddle. One part scripture. One part exhausted fury, a curious tale you overhear. One such prophet once walked into the temple and screamed, "You have made it a den of thieves," before being dragged out by guards. The coins he'd flung into the air still turn up between the paving stones. Others weren't so lucky. Some prophets were stoned. Others disappeared into dungeons. One, it said, escaped by pretending to be a mute and only speaking again on the road to Emmaus. No one knows if he ever stopped talking after that. You begin to realize something unsettling. This isn't just one man with a message. This is a tradition. A strategy. When politics fails, when rebellion is premature, and when prayer feels too quiet, Judea sends in the prophets. Not to fix things, but to announce how broken they are. That night, the city quiets, and you sit under an olive tree, rereading a verse from Jeremiah someone left chalked on the wall. The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. Simple. Hopeless. Too familiar. You wonder, does he believe what he says? Or has the city made him say it? Either way, you lie down with his voice still rattling in your chest. Not because it was polished. Not because it was true. But because, for a moment, it made the world pause, and in Jerusalem, pauses are dangerous. They give you time to feel the cracks. The olives are soaked in honeyed vinegar. The wine has notes of date syrup and just a hint of imperial smugness. And the bread? The bread is warm, airy, and sprinkled with imported salt from Cyprus. You're at a merchant's house in Caesarea Maritima, reclining on a woven couch stuffed with wool and political tension. The room smells of cumin, citrus, and polished cedarwood. Candles flicker behind colored glass, casting the meal in flickering reds and golds. A flute plays softly in the background, Greek melodies, of course. This is Herod's Roman dream city, after all, with its amphitheater, its aqueducts, and its Roman-style forums where nobody discusses Torah unless it's in Latin. You wouldn't survive this dinner party. You'd chew too loudly, quote scripture at the wrong moment, or visibly grimace when someone praises the emperor's grain subsidies. Here, rebellion is uncouth. And being too Jewish? Well, that's for the provinces. The host raises a goblet. To peace and plenty under Rome. He toasts, everyone drinks. You sip, slowly. He's a wealthy Judean merchant, silk, spices, perfumes. His robes shimmer when he gestures. This, my friends, he says, is what stability buys. We no longer starve during drought. We have roads, contracts, clients in Hispania. We are not slaves, we are partners. A scribe across the table coughs, partners who can't mint our own coin, he says, lightly. The room stiffens. Another man laughs to ease the air. Come now, Shimon, would you rather be in the hills with the zealots, eating lentils and dodging patrols? There's chuckling. But not from Shimon. And not from you. Historians still debate how deeply Roman luxury softened Jewish resistance in the decades before the revolt. Some argue that cities like Caesarea, cosmopolitan, wealthy, soaked in trade, created a buffer class, Judeans with just enough comfort to abandon rebellion, but not enough dignity to forget it. Others claim that even the most silk-clad merchants quietly funded resistance, through charitable loopholes, coded letters, or whispered prayers over second cups of wine. Your host continues. Rome has brought us order. Culture. Baths. You've tried Roman baths? He winks. Hot water. Marble floors. Mosaics of Venus. You nod, but say nothing. There's a story you remember, about a priest who entered such a bath and scrubbed his skin raw afterward, claiming he'd touched the idol of conquest. Tonight, though, everyone here is clean. Well fed. Decorated. Chained, because that's what this is, you begin to understand, soft chains. Not manacles, not iron. But velvet bindings, comfort, safety, imported figs. And they work, too. Far better than fear. You overhear a whispered conversation between two younger men near the atrium. If the revolt comes, one says, "Do we fight?" The other shrugs. Against what? The floor tiles. Later in the evening, a servant, Nabatean, maybe, with sharp eyes and sand-worn hands, pours more wine. Someone tells a joke about a Galilean who tried to bribe a Roman guard with 2 shekels and a goat. The punchline involves the goat escaping, the bribe failing, and the Galilean being sent to build an aqueduct as punishment. Everyone laughs, except the servant. He keeps pouring. You step outside for air. The night smells like the sea and rosewater. Above you, stars shimmer over Herod's harbor, the pride of Caesarea, built with hydraulic concrete and imperial ambition, and on a bench by the fountain, you find the scribe again, Shimon. He's chewing a fig and watching the waves. You didn't laugh, you say. He shrugs. My brother died building that harbor. A long silence. He offers you a figure. You take it. They think we're safe here, he mutters. But these pillars are made of crushed villages. Don't let the linen fool you. The empire is never gentle, only slow. A fringe story you recall tonight. A wealthy widow in Caesarea once hosted Roman generals for wine readings, all while sending coded messages sewn into her embroidery to rebels in the Galilee. Historians call it apocryphal. Locals call it Thursday. You return to the dining room. The host is now singing. Badly. Someone has brought out a harp. A guest slurs something about bar kochba, only to be corrected. He hasn't even happened yet. Everyone laughs again, but as the night ends and the guests shuffle out in soft sandals and silence, you look back at the house, its columns, its courtyards, its empty scroll shelf, decorative only, and feel a flicker of something ancient and electric, because luxury doesn't erase rebellion. It just delays it, and resentment. It ages well in clay amphorae. Just like wine. You're late. But so is everyone else. It's festival season in Jerusalem, and the alley is packed shoulder to shoulder with sweat, song, and sheep. Someone's sandal straps are tangled around your ankle, a fig seller is shouting over your shoulder, and a goat, yes, a goat, has decided your tunic is lunch. Welcome to the pilgrimage, the smell. An impossible blend of roasting lamb, crushed myrtle, oil smoke, road dust, and 12 regional dialects trying to outpray each other. You can't hear your own heartbeat. You shuffle forward anyway, because everyone is going the same way, up, toward the temple. You wouldn't survive this crowd. Not because it's hostile, it's not, but because it's hot. Loud, and entirely allergic to hesitation. You hesitate, and someone bumps you. You pause, and someone from Galilee blesses you for not blocking the line. You stop to tie your sandal. Too late. A donkey has already claimed your space. The city, normally a humming beehive, is now an overflowing pressure cooker. Historians estimate that during major festivals like Pesach or Shavuot, Jerusalem's population tripled or more. That's tens of thousands of extra feet, voices, opinions, and bladders, all squeezed into stone alleys built for quieter centuries, your jostled past stalls selling sacrificial birds, temple approved. No blemishes, past scribes hawking miniature Torahs. Past a water seller who chants prices like blessings. Children chant psalms. Grandmothers hum lullabies. Priests shout to make way, and in every shadow, Roman eyes, they're good at pretending not to watch. They lounge near gates, loiter at fountains, lean on spears. But you see the tension in their jaws. They don't understand the words, but they understand the volume. And the crowd, a centurion passes you on horseback. He surveys the crowd the way a blacksmith studies boiling oil. Carefully. Ready to throw a lid on it. You glance at the man beside you, clutching a basket of doves and muttering Deuteronomy. He doesn't look dangerous. But then again, neither did the baker in section 5, and she whispered rebellion into her flour. This is what makes pilgrimage season so unsettling. It's joyous, yes. But it's also flammable. A quirky account tells of a festival where a boy from Nabatea threw a fig at a Roman officer and accidentally started a riot. Or maybe it wasn't accidental. The fig, some say, was rotten. Some say it was symbolic. Some say it wasn't a fig at all, but a well-aimed slur in Aramaic. You reach the southern steps at last, wide, deliberate, built for crowds like this. Pilgrims ascend in rhythmic bursts. Chanting. Clutching bundles. Holding hands, you overhear an argument, two men debating whether a certain psalm should be recited before the sacrifice or after. They both quote the same rabbi. They both raise their voices. And then they hug. That's Jerusalem during the festivals. Intense, but elastic. Until it isn't. Inside the temple courtyard, you find controlled chaos. Temple guards direct foot traffic. Levites coordinate offerings like choreographers. And somewhere inside, the high priest's nerves are probably fraying like old tassels, because he knows what you're only beginning to realize: the Romans aren't afraid of swords, they're afraid of psalms. A unified crowd is terrifying. A singing one? That's worse. You find a shaded corner near a colonnade. A group of youths is sitting in a circle, comparing dialects of the Shema. One has come from Elephantine in Egypt. Another from Antioch. They debate vowel length with the passion of generals planning a siege. Nearby, a Roman officer squints at them and mutters something about chanting insurgents. A translator shrugs. They're talking about grammar. The officer still doesn't look convinced. A tax collector brushes past, counting heads. His assistant jots numbers. You hear him say, "If they all bring one offering each, we're short by," and then he's lost in the crowd. You inch toward a shaded portico where a few older men recline against cushions, sipping spiced wine and watching the crowd flow past. Remember passage of 9. One says, the others groan, one goat escaped, 3 zealots shouted, "Freedom," and the Romans arrested a wedding party. And yet, the first man smiles, the temple still stands. For now, because underneath the song and smoke and sacrifice is something else: pressure, too many tribes. Too many laws. Too much memory. You hear a boy ask his father, "Why do we all have to come here?" His father answers, "Because God said 3 times a year. And because if we don't come together, we fall apart." Later, as the crowd begins to thin, you pass a wall where someone has scratched a phrase in tiny Hebrew script: one God. One city. One crack away. You feel it under your sandals now, not the crack, but the heat of tension rising through the stones. A woman near the exit drops her offering basket. 2 men bend to help. A priest blesses them both, peace, for a second, and then, behind you, someone shouts. You turn, just a misstep. A spilled jar. But for half a breath, every head swivels. Every Roman stiffens. Every singer pauses mid-hymn, then it passes, but now you understand. It's not just the temple that makes this holy, it's the fact that so many people believe it does. all at once, all in one place, all under watchful eyes, and that belief, it's the steam in the pressure cooker. You're not supposed to be this far from the city. And you're definitely not supposed to be here alone. The Judean desert stretches out before you like a forgotten scroll, cracked, yellowed, and full of hidden footnotes. The wind kicks up grit that scrapes your cheeks and whispers through crevices in the rocks. You taste salt on your lips, old and bitter. A shepherd's flute echoes faintly down the wadi. Somewhere above, a hawk circles like a Roman tax official who's smelled unreported income. You're not lost exactly. But you're not where you meant to be either, which is why the cave surprises you. It doesn't look like much. Just a cleft in the cliffside, barely taller than a man ducking. You peer in, expecting bats, maybe. Instead, there's a faint scent of age. Papyrus. Mildew. Something sacred and rotting. You step inside, and your sandal scrapes against a jar, tall. Sealed. Familiar, it's like a memory you've never had. You lift the lid, inside, scrolls. Wrapped in linen. Bound with care. Hidden with desperation, and suddenly, you're not in the desert anymore, you're in a library buried by fear. These aren't temple records. They aren't tax logs or Herodian edicts. These are fringe texts, wild commentaries, prayers rewritten with fire in the margins, apocalyptic calendars predicting the downfall of wicked priests. You open one. The script is Hebrew, older than expected. And beside it, Aramaic. And beside that, Greek. The air in the cave feels tight. These were written by a people who didn't trust stone walls or standing armies. A people who believed the world was collapsing, and that God's truth would survive only if hidden in the sand. You're in Essenes territory now. Or what's left of it. Historians still argue over who exactly lived here, Essenes, proto-zealots, mystics, or just very organized survivalists. But whoever they were, they had rules. Dozens. Hundreds. Some say no spitting on the Sabbath. Some say no speaking out of turn for 3 years. Others say each sin must be confessed in writing, then buried like a fig pit. You wonder if the scrolls you're holding were prayers or punishments. You sit by the cave mouth and begin to read. One scroll speaks of 2 messiahs, one to lead in spirit, one to lead in sword. Another describes a final battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, with detailed troop arrangements, as if prophecy required a general's precision. One, curiously, is just a list of names. Perhaps a roster. Or a eulogy. You turn a page, and the ink smudges slightly beneath your thumb. That thumbprint is now part of the story. The cave is silent, but it speaks. It tells you that not all rebellion looks like a blade. Sometimes it looks like a scribe refusing to compromise. A teacher retreating into the hills. A librarian saying, if they burn our city, they will not burn this. There's a tale told near Qumran of a man who buried a scroll and whispered, if God still listens, he will one day send a reader. You try not to feel like that reader now. Back in Jerusalem, these texts would be scandalous. Some contradict the temple hierarchy outright. Others claim the priests in power are false. That the festivals are off by a day. That the real truth sits here. In a cave no one dares to map. You exit into the sun again, the light blinds you for a moment. Then you see them, 2 figures on the next ridge. Watching. Quiet. Not moving. You pretend not to notice. They pretend you were never here. Later, you pass a caravan near Jericho. A boy offers you a water skin and asks what you're carrying. You smile and say, nothing. Just sand. He grins. Sand lasts longer than cities. You nod. He's not wrong. As night falls, you return toward Jerusalem, scrolls left where you found them, jar resealed, secrets intact. But something's shifted, because now you know, a second library hums beneath the surface. One built not of stone but of parchment. A whisper layer to the world above, and in that world, prophecy isn't something you wait for, it's something you preserve, one ink stroke at a time. The coins hit the marble floor like a slap, not many sounds can silence a temple courtyard. But silver shekels, flung with fury, tend to do the trick. You stand still as a statue, barely breathing, as the echo rings out between limestone columns. Across from you, a Roman envoy, red-faced and rigid. Across from him, a group of priests, pale with a fury so quiet it could shatter glass. Between them, the coins glint in the sun, temple tax, tribute, theft, or maybe all of the above. You wouldn't survive this standoff. Not because it's violent yet, but because it's dense, layered with law, pride, humiliation, and that special kind of tension that only arises when someone tries to audit God. Let's rewind a little. You're in Jerusalem again. Closer to the inner courts. The air smells of hot stone, wool robes, and just a trace of burnt offering. The temple, usually a place of holy rhythm, is humming with the unease of financial debate, the most dangerous kind. The issue? Silver. The annual tax paid by every Jew, half a shekel, traditionally used for temple maintenance and offerings. But Rome? Rome wants a share. Specifically, Rome wants control. First, of the coinage. Then, of how it's stored. Eventually, of where it goes. It's theft, a young priest whispers to you. It's taxation, says a merchant nearby, shrugging. Same thing, but with uniforms. The envoy insists that the silver belongs to Caesar now, that Jerusalem benefits from Roman protection, and that this temple, magnificent as it is, only stands because Rome permits it. That word, permits, causes one of the older priests to clutch his staff until the wood creaks. And then come the swords, not drawn, but visible. Carried by Roman escorts who suddenly step closer, not quite threatening, not yet, but making it clear. Don't mistake diplomacy for weakness. Historians still debate how this specific tax quarrel unfolded, whether the incident happened under Coponius or Pilate, whether it was triggered by a shortage of silver or a political test. But most agree, this moment mattered. Not for the coins themselves, but for what they symbolized. The priests argue that the money is sacred. Once given to God, it's no longer Caesar's to claim. The Romans argue that all silver in Judea ultimately belongs to the empire, including what sits inside the Holy of Holies. Even if they politely pretend not to peek behind the curtain, a footnote in your memory reminds you, Rome once stole treasures from other temples, across Egypt, Syria, even Greece. But those gods didn't have a people as stubborn, literate, and legally inventive as the Jews. You listen as two elders debate Deuteronomy. Does the king's right to tribute supersede the sanctuary's right to sovereignty? Their voices rise. The envoy raises an eyebrow. This is not just an argument over taxes. It is a jurisdictional brawl between empire and eternity. A quirky legend you recall. During one dispute, a high priest supposedly refused to speak directly to the Roman governor, not out of defiance, but because one does not speak to a dog when addressing its master. He was later found mysteriously trampled by a donkey. Scholars disagree on whether the animal was metaphorical. Back in the temple court, the tension cracks. One of the priests bends down, scoops the silver, and throws it, not at the envoy, but toward the altar. Let God decide, he mutters, but it's not a prayer. It's a provocation. A Roman officer steps forward. A priest steps forward to match him. And now you see it, swords are drawn. Temple guards reach for their own. Hands grip hilts. Sandals slide across polished stone. And for a moment, a single, breathless moment, the temple teeters, not physically, but in spirit, because once weapons enter a sacred space, something fragile is always lost. A shout rises. Not a scream, a command, from the high priest himself, emerging from the portico like a man aged 20 years in one afternoon. Enough, he says, and miraculously, it is. The Romans withdraw, sneering. The priests retreat, fuming. But the silver? It stays where it landed, on the floor, between Caesar and the altar, untouchable. You remain frozen until the courtyard begins to fill again. Pilgrims return, oblivious. Children skip past the glinting coins. Somewhere nearby, a shofar is blown, not an alarm, just for practice. But it rattles your ribs anyway. Later that day, you pass a booth in the marketplace where money changers have raised their fees. Temple surcharge, one says. Risk costs extra now. You nod, wordless, because in this city, everything holy can be taxed, and everything taxed can explode. The sun dips low. The silver still gleams on the stone. You walk away slowly, knowing, this wasn't the first time Caesar's fingers reached toward the altar. And it won't be the last. You step off the polished court and into the shadowed corridor that leads behind the veil. It's quieter here. Thick, muffled quiet, the kind that makes your ears ring with your own heartbeat. No pilgrims. No shouting priests. Just oil lamps and smooth stone and the sound of your own sandals brushing against sacred dust, and there, ahead, the curtain. It hangs like a mountain of linen, layered and embroidered with blue and crimson and gold. It's taller than two men and thicker than a fist, meant to keep out not just people, but presence. Beyond it lies the Holy of Holies, or at least, what's left of the idea. You won't go in, of course. No one will. Not until Yom Kippur. And only the high priest. And only with incense thick enough to blind himself. But tonight, you're not looking at what's behind the curtain, you're here for what's beside it, because tucked into these shadows, past the copper fittings, past the polished cedar, is the quiet seat of power, the place where politics pretends to be piety. You wouldn't survive here. You'd flinch at the layered tension, the double meanings, the dagger stares behind gentle nods. This is not the realm of prophets or warriors. It's the realm of priests, and some of them wear daggers more comfortably than robes. A figure emerges, Ananus. Maybe. Or Caiaphas. Or someone else from that crowded priestly dynasty, where cousins outnumber commandments and loyalty is as fickle as Jerusalem's spring weather. He doesn't greet you. He just raises an eyebrow, the universal Jewish sign for you're not supposed to be here. But you stay. Because tonight, the curtain ripples, not with wind. With worry, the high priest has just met with a Roman officer. Again. No one speaks of it directly, but everyone feels it. Rome demands quiet. The zealots demand fire. And the priests? They are trapped between altars and ambitions. You overhear a whisper, he met with Pilate last night. Another, they want names. You follow the voices to a side chamber. Low ceiling. Iron brackets. Two scribes hunched over scrolls that look suspiciously not sacred. One turns to you. You didn't see this, he says, without looking up. A knife glints on the table. Not a ritual blade. Not for lambs, it's short, curved, and Roman-made. Here's the truth they don't teach in temple school: some priests cut deals. Some cut throats. And some do both while quoting Leviticus. Historians still debate the degree of corruption in the final generations of the priesthood. Were they collaborators? Survivors? Opportunists? It's complicated. Some were chosen by Rome. Others bribed their way in. A few tried to steer the people toward peace, but found their hands stained anyway. You pass another door and hear muffled arguments, over incense allotments, over ritual timing. But really, about control. The temple isn't just a place of worship. It's a fortress of influence. Whoever controls the offerings controls the people. And whoever controls the people gets invited to dine with the governor. You pause at a side alcove, where a young priest polishes a silver shovel. He looks up and says, half smiling, the incense must always rise before the blood falls. You don't ask what he means. There's a tale told of a priest who, during one particularly tense Passover, slipped a note beneath the altar stone. It read, "We still serve God. But he may no longer be hiring." No one knows if it's true. But the fact it's whispered says enough. Near the inner sanctum, you spot a ledger, names, weights, donations. One column is curiously marked not in Hebrew, but Latin initials. Donations, the scribe says, without looking up. From friends of the empire. You nod, and just beyond, you see it, a priest sharpening something in the dark. not a pen, not a knife either, a tone. His voice, low and practiced, reciting a legal argument about the boundaries of authority and sanctuary, the kind of rhetoric that sounds like righteousness but is built for bartering. You exit quietly, and outside the veil, the world is still praying, no one knows what's going on behind the curtain. That's the point, but tonight, you've seen it. And it's not just linen separating man from God. It's layers of compromise, stitched tight with fear. As you descend the steps, you pass a beggar who whispers, "They serve Rome in robes now." You give him a coin, even though he didn't ask for one, and you wonder, when the curtain finally tears, will it be by divine hand? Or because someone inside couldn't hold the knife any longer? You find them near the edge of the city, where the stone turns soft with dust and olive trees lean like old men in mid-conversation. No soldiers here. No firebrands. Just a cluster of shaded benches, a jug of lukewarm wine, and a small table that leans slightly to the left, and around that table, the Maccabees. Or rather, what's left of them. Not the sword-swinging heroes from your childhood songs. Not Judah the Hammer, rallying freedom with oil-lampied courage. These men are his descendants, by blood or by myth, and they're not holding spears, they're holding ledgers. You wouldn't survive this company. Not for lack of respect, but because it's impossible to watch heroes grow old without growing a little cynical. Their sandals are dusty, their robes bureaucratic. Their Hebrew has softened with Greek endings. One wears a ring engraved with an eagle, not a menorah, they wave you over. One pours you a clay cup of wine, flat and warm. "You're new," says the eldest, eyes squinting against the sun. "Do you lean more Torah or treasury?" You say nothing, he chuckles. "Good. Best not to choose these days." The younger man beside him, which is to say, 50, is fussing with a wax tablet. Numbers. Grain allotments. Names of villages with complaints. The north is demanding another levy delay. He mutters. "We've already pushed it past the harvest." "Let them fast," someone else replies. "Freedom's not free." That gets a few dry laughs. This is the tragedy they don't carve into Hanukkah dreidels. Rebels grow tired. They trade swords for stamps, strategy for spreadsheets. The fire that once lit revolt now fuels record-keeping. A quirky anecdote circles in your memory. One Hasmonean prince once declared a war of independence against a nearby tribe, then delayed the battle because he had a tax meeting with a Roman representative. The war was later cancelled altogether, when the tribe paid in goats instead of blood. You listen as the men bicker about roads. Actual roads. There's a crack in the Judean stretch again. One says, "The stones were poor quality," another replies, "No, the funding was poor quality." Speak louder, the empire might hear you and offer a loan. Historians still debate how long the Maccabean legacy lasted before collapsing into politics. Some argue the Hasmoneans sold out early. Others say they were trying to hold a nation together with parchment and prayer, and did the best they could, but what you see now is clear. This revolution has an office, the eldest sighs. "I remember when we prayed for the day we'd govern ourselves. And now we pray for quorums," someone mutters. They pass around a plate of dates. You take one, chewy and overly sweet. Like a memory stretched too thin, the conversation drifts, to border disputes, priestly squabbles, whether or not to recognize a new Roman trade envoy who insists on being addressed as Patricianus Magnificus. The consensus? If he brings figs, fine. There's a silence, then the elder leans in. "Young one," he says, "and you accept the title, even if you're older than you feel. Tell me. What do they sing in the alleyways now? Do they still sing about us?" You nod slowly. They sing of Judah the Hammer. Of courage. Of light. His face does something between a smile and a wince. "Good," he says. "Let the children keep the fire. We'll mind the smoke." Another priest walks over, robe dusted with scroll lint. "Meeting with the Roman clerk is delayed," he announces. "He's attending a theater performance." "Of course he is," grumbles the ledgerman. Probably a comedy about us. They pack up the table, scrolls tucked under arms, wine finished in one final gulp. One looks back at you. You ever hold a rebellion in your hand? You shake your head. He holds up a wax seal. Feels a lot like this. Then they disappear down a slope, walking like men who once ran, once marched, once fought. And now limp gently into memory. You remain alone beneath the olive tree. Somewhere, far off, you hear children playing. One shouts, "Judah the hammer." Another shouts, "No. I'm Antiochus." You smile, because stories outlive fatigue, but still, as the wind stirs the leaves above you, you wonder, when a revolution rests, who wakes it up? He's crouched beside a wall, half hidden in the shadow of a date palm. The dust is thick, but his fingers move with focus, dragging a shard of pottery across soft clay. You almost miss it, but then the shape comes into view, an eagle. Broad wings. Raised head. Claws gripping lightning bolts. You freeze. You know that image. Everyone in Judea knows that image. It's the imperial standard, the seal of Rome's legions, stamped on shields, carried into battle, paraded before temples, and this boy. He's drawing it on a brick, his father notices. And he doesn't smile, he mutters a curse, quiet, fierce, Aramaic laced with fear, and yanks the boy up by the elbow. The pottery shard drops. The image remains. You wouldn't survive this street corner. Not because of the drawing, but because of what it means. The father isn't angry at his son, he's terrified. And so are you, it's just a picture. But here in Jerusalem, a picture can become a riot. They still tell the story, half fact, half warning, of the day Roman soldiers tried to sneak imperial standards bearing that same eagle into the city by night. The moment the people woke and saw them posted outside the Antonia fortress, there was panic, protest, even a march on the governor's house. Some say it ended in blood. Some say the standards were quietly removed. Either way, the message was clear: don't put Rome on our walls. And now, here it is. On clay. Etched by a child. You crouch to examine it more closely. The lines are surprisingly careful. The wings detailed. The boy wasn't scribbling, he was studying. Reproducing something he'd seen, maybe on a banner near the barracks, or stamped on a soldier's belt. Why'd you draw it? The father demands. The boy shrugs. It looks strong. The father's face darkens, and you feel a tremor in your chest. This is the new generation, the one raised not on stories of David and the slingshot, but of Rome and the eagle. They see the roads Rome builds, the baths it fills, the power it radiates. Even when they fear it, they still feel it. You sit beside them, slowly. Do you know what the eagle means? You ask the boy. He nods. It flies over everything. It sees all. His father grunts. It steals all. He begins to smear the drawing with his sandal, wiping it away with angry strokes. But the dust doesn't cooperate. The eagle won't vanish easily. That's the thing about empires, they don't always march in with trumpets. Sometimes they seep in through art. Through awe. Through imitation. Historians still debate just how Romanized Judea became in these last decades before the fire. Coins bore Caesar's face. Markets accepted Latin terms. Theaters showed Roman plays, often censored but increasingly popular. And yet, the rebellion still came. Why? Maybe because, as one scholar puts it, they wore Roman sandals but walked Jewish paths. You follow the father and son back toward their house, a low stone dwelling with a fig tree and a mezuzah nailed with pride. Inside, the table is set. Bread, olives, salt. A quiet evening. But you notice it now, tucked on a shelf near the door, a small wooden toy, shaped like a horse. And on its flank, faintly etched. The same eagle. The boy traces it sometimes, you imagine. Not to worship it. Just to understand it, that's the danger, not betrayal. Not idolatry. But fascination. You hear the father mutter a prayer under his breath as he lights the oil lamp. It's louder than usual, more emphatic, the boy joins him. And then, unexpectedly, adds a line. Not from Torah. From a Roman proverb. Something about strength and order. His father doesn't scold him. He just closes his eyes. A long breath. Later that night, you pass a wall near the city gate. Someone has drawn another eagle there, this time crossed out, with Hebrew below, no image shall rule. Below that, someone's added a second line, but they already do. And beneath it all, in child's handwriting, I just like birds. You walk home slowly, your sandals catching bits of gravel. Because you realize now, before the revolt begins with fire and sword, it begins with a boy and a question. Why does their power shine brighter than ours? You smell it before you feel it, warm bread, olive oil, a little time. The Sabbath table is already set, and you're not even through the courtyard gate. There's a flickering glow from inside, 2 candles, not yet lit, waiting for the sun to duck behind the hills. In this Jerusalem home, everything holds its breath, so do you, because this might be the last peaceful Shabbat. And something in your bones knows it, you wouldn't survive this courtyard, not because it's dangerous, but because it's too tender. Too deceptively quiet. In a city ready to split down its limestone seams, silence can hurt more than shouting. Inside the house, a family gathers. A mother hums softly, smoothing out the embroidered cloth on the table. Her hands are quick, practiced, beautiful in their purpose. A boy adjusts the chairs, counting them twice, whispering the names of his brothers, one of whom hasn't come home yet. And the father? He stares into the olive oil lamp, as if it might whisper answers. You're not related, but they let you in anyway. That's how things work here, at least on Friday nights. You find your seat just as the mother lights the candles, she circles her hands, covers her eyes, and for one beat of time, Jerusalem disappears, only light and breath, and the whisper of an ancient prayer. You don't need to know every word. You feel it, and then, the voices begin. Songs rise. Psalms. Blessings over wine and bread. The clink of pottery. The scrape of chairs. Even the neighbor's baby joins in with a well-timed wail. It feels eternal, but your ear catches a detail, a missing harmony. The eldest daughter is quiet tonight. She sings, yes, but softer than usual. You glance at her plate. Barely touched. Her eyes flick to the door every few minutes, waiting. He hasn't come back yet, the brother. The student. The one who started whispering about injustice. About revolt. About Rome and the temple and the sacrifices that no longer feel sacred. He's been seen with them, the men who train in the hills, who recite Torah with clenched fists, who bless their daggers before polishing them. His seat at the table is still set. But the Hallah has gone a little dry, they don't mention him. Not tonight. Across the courtyard, another household sings the same melody, a little slower, a little off-key. The two harmonies drift through the open air and meet mid-courtyard like neighbors unsure whether to embrace or nod politely. You remember what the rabbis say, more than the Jews have kept Shabbat. Shabbat has kept the Jews. But tonight, you wonder, can Shabbat hold a city cracking at the seams? Historians still discuss the mood of Jerusalem in those final months, how much the average person knew, or allowed themselves to feel. Were they walking on eggshells? Or just hoping, week by week, that tension might dissolve like wine on the tongue? The boy beside you fidgets. Whispers in your ear, they say there are spies in the market now. You nod, they say there's a new group near the temple. Not Sadducees. Not Pharisees. Something else. You ask what they believe, he shrugs. That Shabbat won't save us. A joke is told at the table, and everyone laughs, too loud, too long. The kind of laugh that's trying to push out fear by sheer force of volume. You join in, but your throat is tight. Then the knock comes, 3 sharp taps, the father rises. Not slowly. Not quickly. Just intentionally. He opens the door. Two young men stand outside. Robes dusty. Eyes alert. One of them carries a satchel that clinks faintly, metal against metal. We're looking for Levi, one says. A pause. He's not here, the father replies. Not a lie. Not quite, the men nod. If he returns, tell him it's time. They vanish back into the shadows. The table remains still. No one speaks. Until the mother clears her throat, the soup's going cold. And just like that, the moment resets. Spoons rise. Bread is passed. The daughter sings again, this time with tremor but with strength. A new harmony, full of grief and resolve. You step outside before dessert. The stars have come out, faint and unsure. Somewhere down the street, a Roman patrol walks past, armor clinking, jokes in Latin, boots indifferent, and in every home, candles flicker like tiny hearts refusing to go out. You wonder if angels still hover overhead on Shabbat, or if even they are waiting, uncertain. But for now, for this one night, the city breathes together. No daggers. No decrees. No fire, just wine. Bread. And the memory of stillness, you feel it first, not with your feet, but in your chest, a pressure. A murmur. Like the city is holding its breath, lungs full of history and kerosene. The streets of Jerusalem look the same stones, same vendors, same stray cats sunning themselves near the fountains. But something is different now, the ground doesn't shift. But the people do. You wouldn't survive this morning walk. Not because of open violence, not yet, but because of the silence between glances, the coded greetings, the weight in every step. A potter's will turn slower than usual. A carpenter closes early. A priest pauses mid-prayer when a Roman cohort passes, then resumes, louder, like nothing happened. You walk the city and begin to notice, shutters closed where they used to be open, guards doubled where they used to stroll alone, street musicians quiet where they once filled the air with psalms and laughter. Something is building, something is about to burn. At the market gate, a boy brushes against your robe. Not unusual. But his whispered phrase is, tonight. Olive Gate. Tell no one. He's gone before you can respond. You pass an old man chiseling a verse into stone, if not now, when? He pretends it's decoration. But his eyes say otherwise. Everywhere, symbols sharpen. A group of young men gathers near the temple steps, not praying, not speaking, just watching. You catch the glint of a knife handle under one cloak. You remember when this was a place of psalms. Now it hums like a forge. You duck into an alley, the same one where, just a week ago, you saw a child draw the Roman eagle in the dust. Today, the wall bears a different sign. Rome is the fire. We are the spark. It's scrawled in haste, but the message is steady. That's when you hear it, not a scream. Not yet. A crash. Metal on stone. Then shouting, from near the Antonia fortress. You rush toward the noise, but the crowd surges first. Some run away. Some run toward, you choose toward, the square is chaos now. A Roman soldier is on the ground, not dead, but bleeding. His helmet lies a few feet away, dented. A small stone rolls nearby, innocent and guilty all at once. A woman screams. A priest yells for calm. A young man stands with a sling in one hand, still vibrating with defiance. He doesn't run. He waits. 2 more soldiers arrive. Then 4. Then 10, the crowd shifts. The fire catches. This was not the plan, or maybe it was. Historians argue about when the revolt officially began. Was it this stone? This courtyard? Or had the fire been crackling since Rome first marched through the gates with its standards held high? The answer, of course, is both. You're pushed aside as the soldiers charge. The boy with the sling is gone. Or trampled. Or a ghost already. From a rooftop, someone throws a jar of oil, it shatters. not just the jar. The illusion, Jerusalem, holy, weary, splintered Jerusalem, is no longer waiting. You race back through alleys as the city awakens. Not with song this time. With rage. You hear horns, not shofars, but alarms. You hear sandals pounding cobblestones. You hear someone shouting, to the temple. Protect the courtyards. You reach the edge of the city, just as the sun begins to dip. From this vantage point, you see it, the streets churning, the smoke rising, the torches lit not for festival, but for war, and still. The stones hold their breath. There is a moment, brief, silent, sacred, when you wonder if it could still be stopped. If someone, somewhere, might step in. A priest. A Roman. An angel, but no one comes. The fire has already begun, not in the buildings. Not yet, but beneath. In the hearts. In the parchments. In the whispered names of fallen ancestors. In the silence of a brother who didn't return for Shabbat, you sit on the city wall and feel it trembling under your sandals, not from siege machines or marching feet, but from prophecy, because the fuse beneath the temple isn't made of gunpowder, it's made of memory. Now, let the story soften, the wind shifts, cooler now. The light fades over Jerusalem's rooftops, casting long shadows across the marketplace, the alleyways, the temple stones. You listen. Not for revolt. Not for footsteps. But for stillness. You think of the old rebels, now tired. Of the boy and his eagle. Of the father who waited through one last Shabbat for a son who never came. You remember how the candles flickered that night, not in fear, but in quiet defiance. And even now, even with fire rising in the distance, you know, the songs will not stop. Not entirely. Not forever, because buried deep beneath these stones, deeper than Rome, deeper than revolt, is a heartbeat. Quiet. Relentless, Jewish. Eternal.